you think of the officers that were responsible for you? How did the officers treat you and so forth?
They treated us very, very well. I was very happy. I was happy in the service, and of course the officers helped us as much as possible. I don't remember one officer we had problems with. All throughout my entire service, all the officers were very, very good to us.
How about your fellow soldiers?
They were also, we got along very, very well.
During this time, did you keep a diary?
No. I was very young. I probably should have, but
Do you recall the day that your service ended?
not exactly. I remember the period where it was ending. Because
Let me rephrase the question. When the war ended, and that would have been, I believe, in May of '45?
something like that, yeah.
Were you where were you stationed at that time?
I was in England. We were
You were
back in
in-
England.
So what was your reaction when you heard that the war, at least for Germany, had ended?
We were very thrilled and happy about it because we knew we'd eventually be going home. And I had transferred into a service squadron, and I was supposedly in a very active squadron where we used to get points. The service squadron did not get the points that we did. I don't remember.
What did points mean? What does that mean?
It was, you would get so many points for every month for being in service, and we were in active service. The service squadrons were not considered active. So I got more points than the people I transferred to in the service squadron. As a result, when it came time for discharge, I was pulled out of the service squadron and one of the first to be discharged.
Now, you weren't discharged until November of '45. So
No, I was discharged before that.
according to your records,
It was in September.
Wait a minute. According to your records, it says you were discharged on the 11th of September.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
Yes.
September 45.
Yes.
What did I say?
November.
No, September of 45. So the war had ended in May sometime. So now what were you doing between May and September?
I was in the service squadron, not doing much of anything. We were still packing because our planes were still flying, not in action, but they were still flying, so we were still packing parachutes. And of course, when it ended,
So what was the climate like after the war ended? Did things...
it wasn't much different for us because we never saw any action during the war, and after the war, it was pretty much the same.
I see. And did you go to any of the places after the war was over where there were hostilities? Did you ever get to travel to any of it?
Not really, because we were all waiting to see how soon we'd be going back to the States.
Okay. So you never had any travel time where you were able to travel? in
Not
the
after the
country?
war. We did a little bit of traveling during the war when we were on pass.
So now you then came back to this country in was it September? when
It
you got
was
back
the
here?
end of August, beginning of September.
Okay.
But I know I was discharged in September
Where were you discharged from?
from Fort Devens, Massachusetts. That's where I originally went when I was going into service. My first place was to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And that's
So you
where I
went
was
into
discharged
Fort
from.
Devens. From Fort Devens, they sent you to Florida, where you did your basic training.
Yeah.
From Florida, you went over to England.
No, from Florida, I went to parachute school.
Where
In
was that?
Illinois. And from parachute school, I joined my outfit that I was with, the 439th Troop Carrier Command, and that was in North Carolina.
And then from North Carolina?
From North Carolina, we went overseas.
Okay. And then, so were you in England, from England to Fort Devens then?
From England, I went to Fort Devens, yes, to be discharged.
in Fort Devens?
Yes,
So then, took the train back?
Yes.
To Bridgeport?
yes.
Okay. When you get back here, talk about, do you recall the day you got back to?
Not the exact date, no. All I know is when I got back, my first thought was the government would pay for my college education. So I was looking, I went through a series of tests that they were giving veterans to see what they'd be most qualified for the rest of their lives. And they were doing that in Bridgeport. And I took a series of tests, and they said I'd be qualified to go to a teacher's school and study physical education. And that's what I did.
Under the GI Bill?
Yes. Not only was it paying for my tuition, but they gave us a certain amount of money for living expenses. That was the gift of God to us.
I want to go back a minute to what we had said before. Were there any acquaintances that you made in the service that you continued after the service? Were there any friends that you met that you were friends with after you got back?
For a short period of time, but eventually, as we got married, we just separated from each other.
Where were they? Where did they live? Any of them?
Most of them lived in Connecticut, a few of them in Connecticut, and a couple in Massachusetts.
Did you ever join the Veterans Organization?
I did for a while, but I was so busy, with college, and after I finished college, I was teaching, and I was busy. Then I got married, raising a family, so I didn't seem to have the time to spend much time with organizations, not only veterans, but other organizations, between family and colleges and studying and teaching. I didn't have that kind of time.
Let's talk about your career, what happened from school, what did you do? Can you get your speaker, where, I don't see your speaker.
Oh, sorry.
You hold it in your hand for now. Go ahead.
Well, I went to college. I went to college for 4 years. And when I graduated, I couldn't get a physical education job in the school system. There were no openings. So I did graduate work in elementary education. And I went to New York University for my graduate degree. And I ended up getting a teaching position in an elementary school teaching science in grades 7 and 8.
In Bridgeport?
In Bridgeport.
And then?
And I did that for a number of years until I took the principal's exam and I was promoted. I became a principal, and eventually I went on to become
Principal in an elementary school in Bridgeport?
elementary school in Bridgeport.
Okay.
And then from there I was made an administrator with the Board of Education, and I went up the scale on the ladder until eventually I became superintendent.
So you were actually a chief superintendent of schools?
Yes,
For the city of Bridgeport?
yes.
How many years did your career span? You must have started around, what, 40?
I started actually teaching in 1950, I think. It was 1950. And I retired in 1976. So I was with the system about 36 years. Plus, they gave me credit for my time in the service.
Finally, Walter, did the military experience influence your thinking about war, about military in general? Did that have any?
No, no. Once I became a civilian, that was all behind me. There was so much to look forward to with college and starting a new career and family and marriage and family and all that.
Did you ever attend any reunions as far as your the service group? Were there any service reunions that you ever went to?
No.
How would you say that the experience you had in the service and in World War II, how would you say it affected your life?
It uplifted my life. I don't know if I would have been as successful as I have been if it hadn't been for the service. The service gave me the opportunity to go to college, where I became an educator, and I went up the ranks in education, and I think much of that was due because of being in the service. If I hadn't been in the service, I don't know whether I would have ever gone to college, because I didn't have the money.
Finally, Walter, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
Well, the fact I have some very, very fond memories of being in service, and I think it was an important part of my life, a very important part of my life, because it changed my whole life for me. Without my service experience, I would never have succeeded in the life I lived.
Walter, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for serving our country.
Well, I enjoyed reviewing it because, you know, I don't spend that much time reviewing my past life, but I thought I had a very good life, and I think that's the result of being in service. As I said, if I hadn't been in service, I don't know what I'd end up doing for the rest of my life. Here I am. I'm 85 years old. I'm in good health, good memories, family, friends, and I think much of that is as the result of my being in service. I would have never gone to college. And I have good, fond memories of my time in service.
Thank you very much.